Hello everyone, I'm Spinning Kong, and welcome to the first video of my Oxygen Not Included In Depth series. Today I'm going to be going in depth on the topic of doors. Doors are probably one of the most complicated topics in Oxygen Not Included, and I don't say that lightly. To give an example of what I'm talking about, you can use doors to instantly delete tiles. You can use doors to move dugout materials, like an ineffective version of a conveyor belt. You can use them to move liquids, to move gases. You can instantly close a door, although the animation won't show it. And you can use doors as both perfect thermal insulators and also excellent thermal conductors. And you can rapidly switch between the two. There's a lot of topics that I'm going to get into in this video. Timestamps are in the description if there's anything in particular you want to see. But let's just get into it. The first thing you need to know about doors is that they can only take on one of two states, either fully open or fully closed. There is no in between. While it may look like both of these doors are partially open, in fact this door is fully closed while this door is fully open. The animation of doors opening and closing exists to make the game look more realistic. In reality, in the background, the door snaps instantly from being open to closed, and vice versa at some point during the animation. However, unfortunately, this point in the animation can be influenced, which means it's not consistent. It's not possible to tell by the animation alone whether a door is open or closed. There are three systems in ONI that determine whether a door opens or closes. The first is that door's settings. By default, each door is set on the automatic setting, if that setting is available. For example, bunker doors do not have an automatic setting, and the reason for that will be explained later. If a door is on the automatic setting, duplicants are allowed to move through that door. If a duplicant tries to, once they reach the door will open, and once they go through, the door will close again, staying closed by default. In addition, you can change the setting. If you try to change the door to an open setting, the door doesn't simply open, but instead a toggling errand is created using the default priority of the door, which can be changed. Once a duplicant has come and performed the toggling errand, the door stays open all the time. And even if a duplicant crosses through the door will not close. If you change the door's setting to lock, once you've done your toggling errand, the door will close, just like if it was on the automatic setting. In fact, there's no difference between the automatic setting and the lock setting, except lock setting doors will not allow duplicants through. If a door is on automatic setting, duplicants could potentially open the door. They never will if it's on lock. The second system that influences whether a door opens or closes is the access permissions of a door. So by default, a door allows all duplicants through in both directions if it's on the automatic setting, as well as on the open setting. So for example, if I take Rowan, we can see that Rowan is allowed to move all the way over to the left, and Joshua can move all the way from the left to the right. Let's just go ahead and do that. We have no issues. By changing the default access permissions, however, we're able to remove some of these capabilities. If we click on this button here that says passing right through this door is permitted, we remove the ability of duplicants to pass through the door to the right. So Joshua can still move through the door to the left, but Rowan can no longer move to the right. And now that Joshua is on the left side with Rowan, neither one can move back to the right. However, it's possible to override even these settings. By clicking on the name of an individual duplicant, you'll see a tab that looks like it's the same as the default settings, but we can change this without influencing the default settings. Now Rowan, in particular, if we give him just the right arrow, can move to the right, even though the door normally would not allow anyone going right. And even though the door allows duplicants normally to go to the left, Rowan, who misses that number, or that arrow, cannot go left himself. The explanation I've given you so far has not been entirely accurate. Although these tooltips tell you that what they're changing is the ability of your duplicants to pass through the door from one side to the other, in fact this isn't the case. If we, for example, have this door stay open, with no duplicants allowed to pass through the door. As we can see, you can't pass through the door. And we tell the storage bin to start accepting materials on the ground. Rowan is not allowed to go from the left to the right side of this door. However, they can reach this regolith on the other side without having to go through. So you can see him running across and picking up the regolith with no issues. If we set this door to the automatic setting, Rowan still cannot go across to the other side of the door. However, Rowan should be able to open the door and access the regolith on the automatic setting without ever needing to cross from the left to the right side of the door. If the tooltip is accurate, we should still be able to pick up this regolith. However, Rowan is not able to pick up this regolith. The reason for this is because what these settings are really changing is the ability of a duplicant on the left side of the door to open the door, not to open and then cross through the door, or just simply cross through the door. Because you can use duplicant access permissions to block duplicants from opening the door, and the door is normally closed just like a locked door, you rarely need to use locked doors in your base. If you have, for example, a large amount of carbon dioxide gas somewhere outside your base, and you want to prevent your duplicants from going in and out of that area, you don't need to deal with, for example, giving duplicants orders to go in and then orders to lock the door. You can instead just instantly change the duplicant access permissions. And these access permissions can be done instantly, so duplicants can be blocked at a moment's notice without ever having to do a toggling errand. The third and final system that can influence whether a door is opened or closed is the automation system. Every door, except for the manual airlock, has a spot for an automation signal to be implied. If the automation signal that's applied is red, is off, then the door will close. If the automation signal that's applied is on or green, then the door will open. It's possible to override the automation signal, however. If I spawn in a duplicant and instruct them to open this door, they can do so even though the automation signal would imply that the door should be locked. If I then instruct that duplicant to change the door to an automatic setting, and the door closes, they can still move through the door even though the automation signal is red. If, however, I change the automation signal, although the duplicant applied an automatic setting to the door, this automation signal implies the door should be opened, and so it does. The door follows whatever the most recent source of instructions are, regardless of where those instructions came from. There's no benefit to using an automation signal over duplicants, other than that an automation signal can be automated. Now that you know what states a door can take, and how to change the state of a door, I'd like to show you when the door actually undergoes the state change, and how long it takes for that state change to occur. So here I have a light trying to shine downwards, but being blocked by a series of 3 mechanized airlocks. If I turn on this signal switch, causing the mechanized airlocks to begin to open, we can see that no light comes through, and it's only when the animation completely finishes that any light is able to shine through. Similarly, if I close the signal switch and the doors begin to close, the light is able to shine through with no impedance until the doors completely finish their animation. As I mentioned earlier, it's possible to interrupt a closing door and force it to close faster. However, I'm going to ignore that possibility for now and show you how long it takes for a door to close. So over here on the right, I'm going to measure how long it takes for the different types of doors to open and close. Although this setup cannot directly measure how long it takes, what I can do is set times that are higher or lower than it takes for the door to close. And if the time is lower, then I'll get a little red dongle over here, just like this little bit that sticks off is red. And if it's higher, then the little bit that sticks off is green. And considering I have 10 of them, with enough tests, I should be able to very accurately judge how long it takes for these doors to open or close. And I'll just present that information to you. Here we can see it takes between 3 and 3.1 seconds for a manual airlock to close. Here we can see that it takes between 2.7 and 2.8 seconds for a manual airlock to open. Here we can see it takes between 3.6 and 3.7 seconds for an unpowered mechanized airlock to close. Here we can see it takes between 3.3 and 3.4 seconds for an unpowered mechanized airlock to open. Here we can see it takes between 1.2 and 1.3 seconds for a powered mechanized airlock to close. Here we can see it takes between 0.7 and 0.8 seconds for a powered mechanized airlock to open. An unpowered bunker door takes between 380 and 381 seconds to close. The unpowered bunker door takes between 422 and 423 seconds to open. A powered bunker door takes between 38 and 39 seconds to close. A powered bunker door takes between 43 and 44 seconds to open. Finally, pneumatic doors can't be tested in the same methods that I've been using to test my bunker doors and other doors. Pneumatic doors don't block light, they don't block solids from moving or falling, they don't give off an automation signal. You can't change their thermal properties by opening and closing the door. Virtually all the methods that I've been able to use to test these doors and verify these times don't work for pneumatic doors. The best method I've been able to think of is actually just to eyeball them. So that's what I'm going to do. And I can just demonstrate right now that these pneumatic doors, both opening and closing, take about 0.5 seconds to operate. So if I switch this to lock and operate, we should see this will take about 0.5 seconds to go all the way around when it turns green, and this will take about 0.5 seconds to finish the closing animation. And if I set this up to go again, start this to open, and tell this to go green again, we find that it takes approximately 0.5 seconds for it to open. The reason I'm not willing to go through, for example, going frame by frame to find a more accurate representation of how long this door takes to open, I don't feel like it's really worth my time. They're the fastest opening doors in the game, and they're just about the least useful door as well. So I think it's more than accurate enough to just say they are very, very fast and about 0.5 seconds to open and close. Before I summarize everything we found so far, I'd just like to show something that I found that was rather interesting as I was double checking the amount of power it costs to open and close the powered doors. So if I just make sure that I'm not on super speed here and pause the game, when I set this bunker door to close, you can see that at first the circuit status says that it's drawing 0 watts. And very quickly when I unpause the game, it's going to jump to 120 watts, which is the appropriate amount of power draw. So I unpause it, it's immediately 120 watts, and the door begins to close. So that's all I needed to see from that. I just super speed it to finish off that section, put it back to normal speed. So the powered bunker door, given the amount of time it takes to close and the power draw of 120 watts, I would expect that it draws between 4,560 joules and 4,680 joules, theoretically. When I actually perform experiments and measure how much power is drawn, it takes between 4.5 to 4.6 kilojoules of power, which is exactly in line with what's theoretical. However, when I open the door, I expect it should cost substantially more. I expect it costs between 5.1 and 5.2 kilojoules, and yet I get the same 4.5 to 4.6 kilojoule draw. So interestingly, if I were to set this door to open, we see a circuit status of 0 watts, and when I start and stop again, the door is starting to open, but no power has been drawn. Only now does power begin to be drawn into the door. For some reason, when the bunker door opens, unlike every other type of door that takes less time to open than to close in both its powered and unpowered variants, the bunker tile takes more time to open, and yet that extra time doesn't cost you any power, but still goes faster if you have power. So that's something very curious. I've noticed something a little bit similar, I think, with a mechanized airlock. Unfortunately, it takes a lot more testing to verify that something that like operates so quickly is able to like have such a replicable effect, because the main way that I've been checking how much power draw these doors are using is using the daily reports, which only record in 0.1 kilojoule increments, which is I think several operations of a single powered door for a mechanized airlock. Yeah, that's about one operation of a mechanized airlock. So noticing any discrepancy here would probably take dozens or hundreds of operations, and I'm not willing to do that for the mechanized airlock. I did my dozens of operations, and it turns out that mechanized airlocks draw a tiny fraction of what they're supposed to draw theoretically. Given the measured amount of time it takes for the mechanized airlocks to open and close, I would expect that it takes them between 144 and 156 joules to close, and between 85 and 96 joules to open. And both opening and closing experimentally takes between like 47 and 50 joules. It takes 50 joules when I would expect it takes 100 to 150 joules. So something funky is going on with the power draw here. It's difficult to tell exactly when power is and is not being drawn into the mechanized airlocks, because even at minimum speed, the airlocks begin drawing 120 watts like they should be almost immediately. So I'm not exactly sure if there's enough time for this weird effect to happen. I'm just going to double check and I'll get back to you. Alright, this power saving seems to defy my analysis. If I tell this set of doors to close, experimentally based on the 50 joules per mechanized airlock, I expect to pay about 1.5 to 1.6 kilojoules of power to have all of this array close. If we go to today's colony report, check the power usage, we see currently 37.6 kilojoules of power has been used. So I expect to go up to 39.1 or 39.2 kilojoules of power. If I let this actually run and recheck the power, and we get 39.2. If I open this array, I should go from 39.2 up to 40.7 or 40.8. If I check it, it goes to 40.7. So the experimental results seem to be consistent. And there is a space where I can see some power savings. When the doors are open and I tell it to close, if I spam click to delay, we can see that there is a short delay. It's not very long, but it is noticeable before power starts getting drawn after I've instructed the array to close. So there's some power savings there. But considering how much longer it takes for the array to close than that small amount of time that power isn't being drawn, there doesn't seem to be enough time to save the huge amount of power that's being saved. Similarly, if I pause this again and tell the array to open, and I spam click, the array seems to start drawing power almost immediately. Like there's no savings to be found. And the array continues drawing power right up until the last moment, right when the array actually finishes. I did a bunch of tests here using like lights to double check that right up until the last moment power is being drawn, and it is the case. Like, I have no idea where this power is being saved. The right amount of power seems to be drawn. It's being drawn for an appropriate period of time. I don't know why this is happening. If anybody has any ideas, please let me know. If I do figure this out, I'm probably going to do an extra video on it, because this is just very strange. I didn't expect these results. Most of my time today has been spent just verifying results to make sure that it was safe to put it out in a video form, and I had no idea this was going to happen. Alright, I figured it out, and rather than going back and fixing my earlier results, if that's even the right word for it, I thought I'd present all this weirdness here for posterity. Basically, make sure that when you get results in a game like Oxygen Not Included, to get independent verification. Having a theoretical result such as knowing how long it takes for a door to close and using that to calculate the amount of power draw that you expect, is great and all, but it's necessarily a lot less reliable than actually calculating the power draw from the doors, for example. Essentially, what happened, with the exception of the bunker tile or the bunker doors, which just take forever to close, I made sure not to run any of my tests on super speed, because running on super speed, I noticed that there were some odd results. When I tried measuring the speed of mechanized airlocks that were powered and of manual airlocks that are quite quick in operation, I got nonsensical results that were much faster than I expected. So I made sure that I only ran the game on the 3 default speeds, and I recorded my results. And when I went back and rechecked the amount of time it takes for a powered mechanized airlock, and I went on the slowest available speed for the game, I got results that were almost perfectly in line with the experimental results. I was expecting 47 to 50 joules per operation, both opening and closing. And I managed to cut the closing time of the mechanized airlock in half by running the game on slow speed as compared to fast speed. And opening the door as well also received a significant cut. And so I was able to reduce most of the theoretical energy cost. So unfortunately, and this is why I decided to actually keep this here, as well as simply a warning towards people who are trying to figure out the results experimentally, not to just take one result and run with it too far. This game, I assumed, would at least be internally consistent using the automation system, and that as long as you use the inbuilt speeds, that if there were some internal vagaries and that if something slowed down or sped up because of some physics calculations that were happening in the background, they would at least make sure to keep this, something like a counter, a clock, that is the buffer gate, consistent. And that isn't happening. In fact, it's even worse than that. It's not just that the automation system itself is inconsistent, but when I ran the experiment over again using super speed, my theoretical results of paying much more energy when closing this array of doors came to fruition. The cost of closing this array of doors jumped from 1.5 kilojoules to 2.3 kilojoules on average. A substantial, well over 1/3 increase in power cost just by changing the speed at which the game runs at. So I'm going to put up on screen in just a moment an updated, basically all the results that I found for the times and the power costs. Unfortunately, it seems like I'm going to need to do this video, at least this part of the video again, and really dedicate some time to make sure that I get consistent results for every different speed of the game, so that people have some accurate results. Like if somebody's going to run the game on super speed, knowing what speeds doors are working at and how much power you're going to cost on slow speed is basically, it seems like it's going to be useless for you, because things like mechanized airlocks are already costing nearly 50% more just by jumping up to super speed. So I don't have time to get to that this week, and probably not next week, but these results are relatively accurate for all speeds. So as long as you're willing to work within reason and you put some error bars on these results, they should be fairly accurate for you. I haven't gotten yet so far to actually the meat and potatoes, the stuff that I really wanted to get to, the qualitative stuff. So I guess there's going to be a part 2 to this, which I guess I'll upload tomorrow. The stuff I really wanted to get to, like I wanted to show how doors can be instantly forced to close, how you can move fluids around, like if you dig out a tile, for example, the stuff that falls to the ground, or plants and seeds and stuff, you can move that around with doors. Perfectly insulating stuff with doors. Those are all results that shouldn't really change based on these weird, like the vagaries of the speeds. So I'll make sure that I get that done tomorrow. Unfortunately, I don't have another 10 hours to work on that today. It's already 10 o'clock at night. But I'll get that to you soon. I have a million ideas for videos. I'm trying as hard as I can to get them out quickly. And if you enjoyed this, feel free to like and subscribe. and I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good day.